Fireside Chat with Kendalle Burlin O'Connell from MassBio. Kendalle, I'll turn it over to you. If you just want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your role at MassBio, and then we'll get started.
Absolutely. And thanks for being with me, Rowan, and welcome everybody. And thanks so much for having me. So I am Kendalle Burlin O'Connell. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer at MassBio. MassBio, for those who don't know, is the life science trade organization here in Massachusetts. We have about 1,400 members. We were founded in 1985, and we pride ourselves on providing tools and resources, programs, and support to the life science community here. We are the best place in the world for life sciences, and in large part because of the work that we do here at MassBio. What I oversee here, I've been with MassBio for 13 years. I started in 2008, and when I started, I joined the team to run our purchasing consortium. That's one of our core programs that we bring to our members. And in fact, I said we were founded in 1985, and it was for two purposes. It was for policy efforts, right, to educate legislators on what biotechnology is, and also for the founding members to aggregate their spending power. And that's fundamentally what built our purchasing consortium. Throughout the 13 years, I've worn many, many different hats here at MassBio. That's the beauty of a nonprofit. I moved in 2012 to Vice President of Membership, and I still ran the Purchasing Consortium. During that time, we created so many wonderful new programs and services for our members, including our MassBio Connector, our B2B offering, our employee rewards for individual members. And then 2018, I became COO of MassBio, and then I took on more of the operation type work. I oversee HR, IT, again, still membership, also the consortium, and now in the president's role, I manage the majority of the staff. I drive the strategic direction of the organization. I run our innovation services program. So many of the core programs and deliverables that we bring to our members.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to dive into some of the specifics over the course of this hour. As a heads up to our audience, we will be having a Q&A session a bit later on. So if you would like to ask a question of me or Kendalle at any time, please just drop it into the chat and we will do our best to get to all of them. Cool. So Kendalle, since 2008, a lot about the life sciences industry in Massachusetts has changed, right? I mean, the Seaport District kind of didn't exist, and neither did the growing hubs that we see now in places like Watertown and Waltham. I'm wondering what you see as some of the biggest changes that the industry has seen and how your organization has approached those.
Yeah, Rowan, the growth we've seen has truly been incredible. So when I started at MassBio in 2008, we had about 400 member companies. And now to think we have over 1,400, right? That is so representative of the growth of this cluster. And think about the last decade, right? There was about 21 million square feet of lab and manufacturing space that was built over that time. And we employ about 84,000 employees in the life sciences here in Massachusetts. What makes our cluster so incredibly special is this robust emerging biotech community that we have here. It's my favorite thing about MassBio and in our community, these early stage companies that are so dedicated to breakthrough cutting edge research and science. Because of this robust early stage biotech community, we've been able to recruit 18 of the top 20 biopharma companies to have a physical presence here during that period of time. And, you know, something that, again, makes Massachusetts so unique is this incredible relationship between industry, academia, and government, right? Mm-hmm. So in 2008, the administration signed the Life Science Initiative, which was a $1 billion 10-year investment into the life sciences. And that has been so core to the foundation of growth and success that we've seen here in Massachusetts. Employment since that time has increased in the life sciences by 55%. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about this, but when you think about what's to come, if you've read the MassBio's industry snapshot released in August, there's another 20 million square feet of lab and manufacturing development in the pipeline over the next 4 to 5 years. And what does that mean? That means we need to fill, conservatively, 40,000 new life sciences jobs in that period. So this is a moment, right? This is the next chapter of life sciences here in Massachusetts, and the growth is incredible.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up that number because I often reference the industry snapshot that was released.
Thank you for that.
Of course. Well, thank you for providing it. It's a great resource. But 40,000 is almost an unimaginable number. I mean, that means that we're taking half of the workforce now and then just adding that again. I wonder, one, what you see as the challenges that are going to come with that. And two, how we even get those people here in the first place, and not only get them here, but retain them, make sure that they can stay in Massachusetts.
Those are all the most important questions, Rowan. And it's something that we, the team here at MassBio, is talking about every single day. So yes, this is a huge challenge. If we don't find a way to fill these 40,000 jobs, there's potential that we won't be able to say we're the best place in the world for life sciences in the coming years, because these companies won't stay here if they don't have the workforce. We know this. But one of the attributes that has made Massachusetts the best place in the world for life sciences is we have the best and brightest talent. Think about all the incredible academic institutions that we have in Massachusetts. So that challenge is also an incredible opportunity. Okay, when you think about life sciences, most people go immediately to Cambridge and Boston. But there's no space left here in East Cambridge. We are at 100% capacity. In Boston, I mean, I think we're at 99%, right? So the reality is we need to regionalize this industry. We need to bring this industry to all areas of the Commonwealth. And we're seeing that emerge in places like Watertown, right? That activity is incredible. There's over 30 life science companies in Watertown. And when you think about Newton and Needham, right? This is a nice emerging life science cluster. We've seen this up on the North Shore. Worcester is a wonderful life science cluster as well. And so bringing the life sciences to communities that have historically been underrepresented in this industry is critically important to this next chapter, and tapping into some of this new workforce. It's also a wonderful opportunity to further diversify the life sciences workforce here in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up Watertown, which is, I think, just a great example of one of these emerging sort of regional clusters. What is Watertown doing right that other communities should emulate?
Yeah, so something that employees really want, and I don't think that this is unique to the life sciences, but I'm only talking about through that lens right now. They really want an environment that has a wonderful work-life balance, right? We know some of the core issues that are facing the life science industry, all industries here in Massachusetts, the infrastructure issues that we're seeing, transportation, housing, childcare, et cetera. So people really want something that's close to home, that has a unique energy and vibe. We were talking about this a little bit before we went on. That's what Kendall Square has. It's so exciting. There's a great energy here. And so when you think about these other clusters, they really want to be able to replicate that. And so we've got a program, our bioready communities program, and that's a program where we rate towns and cities on how ready they are for the life sciences. And actually Watertown, Needham, Newton are all gold rated, which means they are ready for recruitment of life sciences. What that specifically means, and I'm going to read you a few of the data points, right? It means they're pre-permitted for biotechnology, laboratory, or manufacturing use. Or they have existing buildings in that space that are, active. It means they have municipal water and sewer available. And they have a zoning, which is allowed for biotech or manufacturing by special permit. The last kind of key differentiator for those ratings is they've identified a point of contact within their town or city hall to assist with biotech projects and recruitment. So they are ready, right? And they will be the next new hub, because think about their proximity to everything that's happening here at the epicenter in Cambridge and Boston. So close. Plus they've got great restaurants, they've got great shopping, they've got great additional, residential housing. It's got everything you would need for success in the life sciences.
So in addition to identifying those communities that are bio-ready, what is MassBio doing to make other communities bio-ready and incentivize them to work towards some of these metrics?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about the life science industry, and these, we know these are jobs that are highly compensated, so incredibly attractive for towns and cities to think about bringing that type of opportunity to their constituents, right? And so we're working all the time with companies that are looking to either relocate here within Massachusetts to grow and expand within Massachusetts, or to move to Massachusetts. It's something that we pride ourselves on doing. We work with those companies to figure out truly what is the best fit for them. And I think with towns and cities, letting us know what they have to offer is so incredibly helpful in that conversation. Although we're MassBio, we aren't restricted by geography. So we truly work with our companies to find what the best fit is for them. We clearly think Massachusetts is the best fit, but if it's not, we understand that and we'll work with what the needs of that company are. So the more these towns and cities can work with us to let us know what they're doing to make this recruitment easy for companies, it's very, very helpful.
How have you seen the needs of companies that are expanding change over the last decade?
You know, we're seeing incredible investment in the industry, right? It's at unprecedented rates. And when you think about 2020, and 2020 was such a challenging year for so many people. But the life sciences did what the life science prides itself on doing, providing solutions to patients, right? And so that created incredible interest and excitement in the life sciences and investment, right? 2020 was a record-breaking investment year. And that momentum is continuing into this year. And so what we're seeing is huge investment, which means we're accelerated science, right? And these companies are looking to grow, expand, and scale very, very quickly, particularly as it relates to manufacturing. So this is really the next chapter of life sciences. And when companies scale into manufacturing, biomanufacturing, they love the idea of proximity to their R&D. So that's why Massachusetts makes so much sense to stay here in Massachusetts. And that's why expanding into other areas outside of Boston, Cambridge is a smart value proposition, right? Real estate is, you get much more bang for your buck outside of Boston, Cambridge. There's more land, right? And again, then you can tap into new workforce. So it's the next chapter, and it's something we're very, very focused on.
Absolutely. And Kendall, something that you and I have discussed before is this idea that when it comes to, attracting and retaining workers, it's not just about what the company can offer in terms of, where they're situated or what kind of pay or benefits they offer. It's also about things like, do they have housing? Do they see themselves being able to eventually raise a family if we're looking at, younger workers? And some of these are things that are in business leaders' control, and some of them are really more in the hands of policy leaders, especially, I think, when it comes to housing and when it comes to other types of commercial development. So what are you seeing as kind of the approaches that you're hoping to take, and how is MassBio working with some of these stakeholders?
Yeah, all of those are incredibly important to this, right? How can we recruit talent if we don't have housing? How can we tell people come to Massachusetts but sit in 4 hours of traffic, right? It's something I do. I live in Haverhill. I sit in lots of traffic. So it's really imperative for us to stay on top as the best place in the world for life sciences. And so what we pride ourselves on doing is being an advocate for the industry and convening all key stakeholders. So we are working very close with our partners in government around this. We are working very closely with our partners in industry and academia to facilitate these conversations, but ensure that there's a solution. And it's a work in progress, of course. We can't solve these issues overnight, but half the battle is making sure we're actively having a dialogue and a solution-based dialogue. So it's something we're working on all the time, and obviously our partners in state, but also our municipal partners as well, right? Having this conversation, what are your challenges? What are your needs? How interested are you in the recruitment of life sciences to your community? Okay, well, let's work together to make sure you've got the rating, so you're bio-ready, but then let's talk about some of these other very important infrastructure issues as well.
Absolutely. And given the increase in the number of life science companies and the anticipated growth over the next several years, can you envision any opportunities for job creation for folks without a four-year college degree? And here we're thinking apprenticeship programs or other mentorship programs, which could provide a career ladder.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, right? There's this misconception that to work in life sciences, I have to have a PhD. That is not true. Although obviously there's a percentage of jobs that are PhD level, but these are fully integrated companies. There's opportunities for every kind of background, particularly as we think about clinical trials and manufacturing. The need for sub-bachelor degrees has increased exponentially over the last few years. I think MassBio had put out a report, and here in Massachusetts, it's increased by 140% maybe in the last 10 years. So the need is real. And these apprenticeship programs are so incredible, right? We're giving a fast track into industry. And in the industry snapshot, you've seen this. The average salary for manufacturing jobs here in Massachusetts is $160,000 a year. That's incredible. And so to provide that pathway is so important. And it's something we're working really closely on. For instance, our partners at the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center and Ken Turner, their president and CEO, we are in lockstep trying to figure out how do we standardize curriculum for training for these opportunities and how do we scale? And it's something we're working on each and every day. Not only with Ken, but we are very, very aligned on the importance of this and the timeliness of this.
Do you see hiring managers within biotech companies beginning to be more open to folks from those backgrounds as well?
Absolutely, right? Because there's so many open opportunities. And we also know it's a wonderful way to further diversify our workforce, right? Sometimes what's on paper isn't what that person has, right? Diversity in regard to background, experience is so important. Diversity in regard to race, ethnicity, gender is so important. These are all, things that this industry is very, very focused on. We at MassBio have been proud to be leaders as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and ensuring that our member companies have the tools and resources to think about this. And part of that is thinking about that minimum requirement. Does a role truly need a four-year degree? How do we work around that? Because providing opportunities to individuals from diverse backgrounds, we know leads to better business outcomes.
Absolutely. And I would really like to dive into some of the specifics around your work in DEI. I mean, what are the specific actions that business leaders, hiring managers, partners like MassBio can take to ensure a more diverse workforce in life sciences?
Yeah, so Rowan, it's something that we try to work with our members on, regardless of what size they are, and build it into their business strategy during their growth trajectory, right? So when you think of a very small startup company, they've got a very small team and a finite amount of funding. But integrating DE&I practices day one is critical to ensuring that this isn't, these objectives aren't an afterthought, that they're a business priority. And once you do that, again, it's a priority every milestone that they hit during their growth trajectory. And so we provide them some very simple tools and resources to start integrating this, right? When you think about hiring practices, we provide networks that they can tap into to ensure that their recruitment is focused on diversity. Creating internal environments of inclusivity, right, is very, very important, and we provide those tools as well. Supplier diversity is a really easy way to start moving the needle. Shifting your spend to minority-owned businesses, we can help companies do that. And actually, most recently, let me take a step back. We were the first life sciences trade organization to bring on a director of diversity and inclusion a number of years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And most recently, we've doubled down on those efforts because we know how important it is to our member companies. They just need the tools and resources to really implement meaningful change. And so we provide these core suite of offerings, but now we're also able to work with companies who want to think a bit more strategically about how to do this. And we offer a consultative approach as well, which is really, really exciting. And we know that there's a huge commitment to our members, but it has to be proactive and it has to be reoccurring. And it has to be a business priority. I think that's really the key.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up internal inclusivity because I think that that's a very, very important part of talent retention. And I think it's something that's a lot more difficult for companies to measure. What kind of metrics do you provide for that?
Yeah, so we worked with companies to create a mission statement around DDNI. First of all, tell your employees why this is important to your company. And it has to be a top-down initiative, right? It has to start with the leadership. They have to show their commitment. We also encourage companies to do an employee satisfaction survey, right? To understand what do they enjoy about their company? Where do they think the company can improve? And what type of practices would they like to see in the future?
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much. I want to turn the page a little bit. So we have an audience question, and again, a reminder to everyone, please send these in or as we go along. You're welcome to just pop them into the chat or the Q&A box at any time. So MassBio just certified Newton as a MassBio Platinum community. What does that mean?
Thank you for that correction. I said gold. Thank you for that.
Perfect. So what does it mean to be a platinum community?
I mean, from a company perspective, it means they've got all of that criteria. So the criteria that I mentioned, and then I think, there's some federal regulations that they've implemented as well. Ben Bradford, who's our Vice President of Membership and Economic Development, is the go-to resource on this. So if your company or your municipality or your city or town is interested in getting a rating, please reach out to Ben. You can find that on massbio.org. Or if you're a company looking to locate in one of these towns, Ben can help guide you on what the different ratings mean and what that will mean for you from a relocation perspective.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Great. And I wanted to turn it back as well to the conversation we were just having around DDNI. One thing you said really resonated with me, which is this idea that it's something you want to implement from day one. And this is actually something that I've heard from consultants and other folks in the DEI space, that it's almost easier with startups because they're building from the ground up. They have the opportunity to really create that culture before the company even builds. But for larger, more established companies, it can be a little bit more difficult because you're almost reverse engineering this process. Can you shed a little bit more insight into what the process can look like for these larger companies?
I mean, so I think pros and cons with each size company, right? I think what you said about the small companies and if they integrate this day one, it has become part of their company culture at every stage. The challenge is, right, I mentioned this, they have a very finite amount of funding and they have to hit milestones in a very short period of time in order to raise additional funds. With large companies, they've got depth of resource, right? So it's, again, truly making that investment, but now they're able to justify from a financial perspective, bringing on staff, right? It has to be top down, but integrating ERGs and sort of alliance groups is so critically important. Doing all of those things like employee satisfaction surveys is critically important. Working every day to create an environment of inclusion is important. But now there's a bit more that they can do in regard to recruitment, right? Ensure that when their position is open, they're doing everything they can to recruit from diverse networks, not their typical network, right? And then tap into programs like Project Onramp is an incredible program. And that was, this initiative was created maybe 3 or 4 years ago in partnership with MassBio, MassBio Ed, Life Science Cares, the Mass Life Science Center, and our friends at MBI are now involved as well. And this is a wonderful program providing students from low-income backgrounds, typically first-generation college students, an opportunity to be an intern at life science companies. And So I think last year we were able to place 150 students through that program, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow and scale that program. But what that means for these students is so many of them are then hired as full-time employees at these companies. So that's the type of investment that a larger organization really needs to make.
100%. And for companies that might be interested in getting involved with Project Onramp or a similar workforce development initiative, what should they know? What can you tell them right now?
Yeah, so please, again, reach out to us at MassBio. We're happy to make that introduction. Our friends at Life Science Cares run that program right now. And the sooner you can get involved, the better, because they do so much work finding the students and ensuring that we're pairing those students with the right company. It's the right fit. And again, any workforce issues, it's something we're having conversations with all the time. We are working on building a working group with our friends at Mass Life Science Center right now focused on this. So please reach out to us and we'll keep you in the know on everything that's happening there. And, I just want to go back to this DDNI conversation, because although we are leading and really, I think, making meaningful impact and change, it's still a work in progress, right? This STEM traditionally in the life science industry traditionally has been a male dominated field. And if you looked at MassBio's 2017 Liftstream report, it shows that men and women, this is more from a gender perspective, but men and women enter this workforce at the same rate. But still, when you're looking at the C-suite and board level positions, representation from women is so much smaller. Never mind, when we think about further diversity as it relates to ethnicity and race. So there's still so much work to be done, but it has to be a proactive effort. There has to be a plan and it has to be a business priority. And again, if your company is looking for assistance in this and how can you integrate DE&I into your organization, please don't hesitate to reach us, the team here at MassBio. We're here to help.
On the subject of having women on board seats, California has for several years had a law in place actually that requires public companies to have a certain percentage of their board be made up of women. There has been sort of a push on and off within the Massachusetts legislature to enact a similar policy. Do you see that going anywhere?
I don't know if I see it going anywhere, but I think if we're going to truly implement change, it's certainly helpful. I think the impacts that California has seen as a result have been quite positive, right? And so as I mentioned, it has to be purposeful and intentful. And so when you're required to do that, magically it is, right? And so I think it could be quite helpful. I'm not the policy guru here at MassBio. We've got a team of folks that handle that. But I think it could be quite interesting and again, very positive outcome seen in California as a result.
Well, and California is perhaps the main competitor for life sciences talent with Massachusetts.
Absolutely. But we still think we're the best place in the world for life science. Per capita, we certainly are. But it's great to see this, right, happening, right? We're making this investment and we know our community is very invested in DE&I and our counterparts out in California are as well. And that's great, right? Just like science, we don't care where the science is happening. We want to get it to the patient. We don't care where, being a leader around DE&I is happening. We all want to take part in this because we know it's important, it's the right thing to do, and it's the right business decision.
A bit of a rising tides lift all boats situation.
Yes, indeed.
So we have a couple of submitted questions from the audience,
Okay.
and we will dive into those now. And again, just if you have a question, submit it. We want this to be kind of an open conversation, right? It's not just me and Kendall talking, it's for everybody.
Although we could probably go on forever, but
I'm sure we could. So this is from an audience member. We're seeing so much interest in lab conversions, but we have a shortage of skilled labor to build labs. How will this impact our ability to grow biotech in the suburbs?
So as I mentioned, we know there's an incredible need and there's just no space left here, right? So the suburb is the reality. That development and that conversion has to happen in the suburbs or there's no place else to go. And we know there's a need. So I talked about that investment, but I'll do a little bit more of a deep dive on what that number looks like, right? So in 2020, $5.3 billion of venture capital investment came into Massachusetts headquartered companies, right? These early stage companies. And then we had 21 IPOs here in Massachusetts.
Mhm.
Just this first quarter of 2021, $4.3 billion of venture capital investment. So when you think about this, right? Last year was a record-breaking year, both from the venture funding and IPOs. Q1 this year, $4.3 billion, third largest funding year on record, and 10 IPOs out of Massachusetts.
Mhm.
It's incredible, right? So the development is happening, and it has to happen in the suburbs. So I think that there are many, many skilled developers that are focused on the life sciences. And I think that they are very invested in meeting this demand and thinking about creative opportunities and areas to continue to grow.
Mhm. Great, thank you. We have another question. How can towns along I-95 South, Dedham, Canton, Westwood, Norwood, Walpole, etc., attract life sciences firms? They don't have the proximity to Cambridge, the talent pool of Lexington, or the commercial office square footage of towns north of the turnpike like Waltham, Lexington, and Burlington.
You know, I think that's the reality of this. Take a location like Worcester, right? They've really truly made significant investments in life sciences, and this hasn't happened overnight. This has been decades in the making, but they've got some of the core ingredients, right? They've got wonderful academic institutions. They've got commuter rail access. And now they've got this amazing work-life balance. They've got the ballpark there. They've got breweries. They've got restaurants, right? And that has been very attractive when you think about recruiting life science companies because of this work-life balance. I can live here, I can work here, and I have all of these wonderful things socially to partake in. So it's something that, you know, areas that are really thinking about making an investment in life sciences should consider.
Great, thank you so much for that. We have another question, and I'm really interested in this one, especially as we were talking earlier a bit about how women can sort of rise through the ranks of life sciences firms. Given the current shortage of childcare, how is that impacting recruitment of women in your member firms? Is there any discussion of on-site childcare?
Yes, so this is a very timely question. And we know, right, women have been disproportionately impacted by childcare issues through COVID, and certainly in the life sciences industry, but in all industries. It's a conversation that we're actively having with our partners in government and our friends at mbta, right? They're very focused on early childhood education and what can we do in the business sector to think about this. I think that companies helping to offset child care costs, it's going to be really important. I think the life science industry is well positioned to do that. Where, again, we don't have a solution right now, but we're having the conversations and we're actively working with our partners to think about a solution. But listen, I've got two kids. I've got a soon to be 9-year-old and a soon to be 7-year-old. And it is really, really hard. I told you I live in Haverhill. Sometimes my commute is close to 4 hours a day. I mean, it is impossible trying to figure out how do I juggle my kids and work and balance all of this. So I firsthand understand, and I'm very, very passionate about this issue and trying to figure out meaningful solutions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And piggybacking off of that, we had a very similar question, which is, you know, on the issue of caregiving. Unfortunately, many female employees end up exiting the workforce prematurely due to caregiving responsibilities. Are you addressing this in any way?
Yeah, so we certainly see that, right? That's half the reason why there's a significant drop off when in this industry, men and women are coming in at the same rate, but as they get to that C-suite or, you know, those positions that probably have a more demanding, rigorous schedule, they can't balance work life as part of that. And so they're having to make those type of decisions, and they shouldn't have to make those type of decisions. Things that companies can immediately do. And I think COVID really forced the issue and expedited the response, right? Flexible schedules. Mm-hmm. That's a reality. We know that people can work effectively remotely. We've seen it firsthand. There's no reason why this practice can't continue once there's a back to work scenario. It has to, right? I think companies helping to offset some of the incredibly high cost of childcare is a reality. And with life science companies, you talked a bit about retaining employees. That's part of it. They have to have these very competitive compensation packages. And part of that probably is to help offset the cost of childcare.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now our next audience question. I had this thought when you said that you were commuting from Haverhill. So I'm curious about your own experience as well. The question is, it would be great if public transportation helped bring professionals into the suburbs. How can we encourage the MBTA to support this migration?
I think pre-COVID, I mean, at least here in Cambridge, there were a huge amount of people who were utilizing public transportation, whether it was the commuter rail or the T. We've definitely seen less of that. I know because the traffic is the same, but we know for a fact there's not as many people on site in their office, right? So I think continuing to utilize that, probably more flexible train schedules would be beneficial. Probably, busing would be helpful from various areas. Is important. We do see that here in Cambridge. There's from the Red Line to various drop-off points, but we need to do more of that, particularly as we regionalize. We need to make this access into Cambridge and Boston efficient. So there has to be solutions around that. And I think busing is a pretty viable solution as well. Yeah, for me, driving is easier, right? Because I'd have to then drive to 20 minutes to a train, take the train, get to a location, right. Walk, right? I can use that time productively on calls, sometimes podcasting.
I like it. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the MBTA is facing a variety of challenges right now. They were going to cut commuter rail service entirely on some lines, including the Haverhill line, and then decided against that. And I think they're still juggling what the commuter rail schedules and absolutely light rail schedules would be in the future.
Yeah, and of course, companies incentivizing employees to use public transportation is important. That was happening quite frequently before COVID, and I believe that once we're back at work in the office, that will continue, right? Because we're not seeing as many people using public transportation. We have to continue to encourage that.
Mm-hmm. And I think that will be important from business leaders as well to, subsidize and otherwise incentivize public transit, because I mean, for me, I'm not coming into the office all the time. I'm coming in part of the time. So I can't justify spending $90 on a link pass for the month. It just doesn't make sense. So
yeah, so we've got to think creatively about ways around this to continue to encourage the workforce to utilize the most of the time wonderful public transportation system.
Exactly. We have another audience question. Some municipalities, including Newton, are looking at banning the use of natural gas in new construction and major renovations. How might that impact the lab sector?
Yeah, so I'm certainly not the expert on this, but the quick answer is it will not help recruitment of life sciences to your company. That's just a fact. I mean, to your city or town. That's a fact. That's not good for the industry. Obviously, they have unique needs, and that companies won't be able to locate in your particular city or town.
Mm-hmm. We have another question sort of focused around Newton. Does the high cost of housing in the region, especially in Newton, affect the lab sector recruitment?
So I think that given Newton's proximity to Boston and Cambridge, I think you are able to tap into workforce from a variety of different areas. I mean, of course, that high cost of housing in Newton and everywhere is a major issue right now, right? It's not unique to Newton or Needham or Watertown or Wellesley. This is, although it's very high there, we know this, but it is high everywhere. And so it's part of what we need to be thinking about more holistically, as a state with all the key stakeholders. But certainly I think, again, that proximity, there's wonderful workforce that are coming into Boston and Cambridge. You're just a few miles out. They will make that drive or train ride.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for me personally, people talk about how the high cost of housing in Massachusetts might drive people away to other life sciences hubs in the US. The other life sciences hubs in the US are in the San Francisco Bay Area and San Diego, which have higher housing costs than Greater Boston does.
Exactly. And again, there's this perfect storm for success, if you will, that I like to say we have here in Cambridge and beyond, right? Because we're working hard to replicate this recipe. But no other place in the world can you have a coffee at a coffee shop here and bump into CEOs of companies, VCs, bench scientists, everybody is just out and about here. And that's what makes this so unique. And when you think about this radius, and this is the foundation, the proximity of Cambridge to world premier academic institutions, world premier hospital institutions, all within a couple mile radius. All of these startups right here, these large biopharma that have a physical presence here. It's got every key ingredient, including the support from government. So yes, there's a high cost of housing, but that's in other areas too. You could go to another life science cluster and you don't have this magic that we have here.
And I think on the subject of collaboration, I mean, the pandemic really, really accelerated the rate of collaboration between different biotech companies, small and large, between academic institutions and different labs. Do you see that level of collaboration continuing beyond the pandemic as well?
I really do. And we're seeing it each and every day here, right? Here at MassBio, one of the suite of programs we have are innovation services programs where we're fostering these collaborations, and the appetite for this is so incredible right now. And when you think about what happened through 2020 and COVID, right? 95 companies here in Massachusetts pivoted to focus on COVID related research, whether it was, therapeutic, diagnostics, vaccines. And the success of that was truly, as you mentioned, through collaborations. When you think about the vaccines that were approved, that was a result of these incredible, unprecedented collaborations. We would be foolish not to continue this, but we are seeing it firsthand. This is a model that we will continue to benefit from, and patients will continue to benefit from, because it helps to really expedite that timeline.
Absolutely. Well, I guess time will only tell. We do have a couple more audience questions. One, you mentioned busing as a transit solution. What about private van bus service? Might that grow to serve suburban life science centers to transport nearby commuter rail or green line stations?
Absolutely, right? I think that getting folks to work, getting folks to sometimes Cambridge is all a priority. And I think, I'm sure that the developers who are on this call are thinking about this as part of their strategy when they're thinking about areas to build and locate. But yes, of course, it's very complementary to the concept.
Another audience question. Are there opportunities for non-PhDs in life science jobs? Is there a career track for those with just a high school degree or associate's degree?
Such a great question. The answer is yes, 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 right? There are so many different opportunities in the life sciences. And if you're listening to this, we are talking about major workforce needs. And so there's incredible, depending on where you're at. And here's a good story firsthand, I will tell you. I don't have a science background, believe it or not. I was a political science and economics major. I went to law school and thought I would be a practicing attorney, but there was an opportunity in the life sciences. I had a translatable skill set, and I was able to sell why I thought I was a good fit for this opportunity. 13 years later, I'm president of MassBio, right? So yes, if you are excited about the life sciences, go to MassBio's career page. There are so many open opportunities. And this is part of what we're talking about for solutions and opportunities as it relates to this workforce talent gap that we're about to face. We need to be able to have programs for high school students, certificate program, apprenticeship programs that create a pathway into the life sciences. There's a huge need for roles that have an associate's degree in the life sciences, particularly as it relates to clinical trials and biomanufacturing. So there's plenty of jobs. If you're interested, please check out our careers page. Reach out to the team here at MassBio and we can give you further guidance around that.
Great. One question, how can we connect with Kendalle directly via email?
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm happy to share my email. So Kendalle, Kendalle .O'Connell @massbio.org.
Perfect. Hope everybody took that down.
And you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Mm-hmm. And on the subject of life sciences careers, I think that when people think about a career in life sciences, they're thinking about lab jobs, researchers, manufacturers, but there's a lot of ancillary work that goes into it too, sales roles and marketing and people who are establishing connections with grant funders. Can you just speak a little bit to some of the less scientific opportunities in the life sciences?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. These are fully integrated companies. For these companies to be successful, they need so many supporting roles. And every position plays a key role in getting a solution to patients, right? So as you mentioned, communications, marketing, operations, HR, legal, regulatory is very important. For those larger size companies, obviously government affairs plays a huge role in this. Facilities, purchasing is incredibly important role. And then, you know, as you're thinking about manufacturing, there's a whole nother suite of jobs. But there are so many different types of positions. And if you're curious, again, just look at the MassBio careers page. That is a great, you know, we really, our members, this is their go-to sourcing for positions because it's a quasi pre-vetted community, right? It's people who are interested or in the life sciences looking at these. And that will give you a great snapshot on all the different types of jobs. Some of those and certainly will require a science degree. There's no doubt about that, but so many of them do not require a science degree.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for shedding some insight on that. I think it's an important point to make.
Absolutely.
Another audience question. How do nonprofits forge relationships with life science employers?
I don't know. So, I mean, listen, and life sciences is a hugely collaborative industry. I think reaching out, LinkedIn is a great vehicle for this. This is how things get done in the life science industry. It's through relationships, it's through collaboration, it's through partnerships. So if you're a nonprofit, and I am assuming maybe this is a disease foundation type of nonprofit, I don't really know, but reach out to a contact at that company and start working your way through the channels. You can also certainly reach out to me and I may have some contacts that I'm happy to help facilitate for you.
Great, thank you. Another audience question on sort of a similar note. What are the philanthropic issues that matter to life science employers?
I mean, again, the life science industry is a very giving industry. At the end of the day, everything that we do is around bringing solutions to patients. And so part of that is truly being charitable and being stewards of the community, right? That's why actually for towns and cities that are looking to recruit life sciences, these companies aren't just companies that are going to, you know, clock in and clock out. They want to make a meaningful impact and difference in their community on a variety of levels. A great organization to get involved with is Life Science Cares, right? They are truly the sort of volunteer charitable arm of the life science industry, working with all types of organizations here, Cambridge, Boston, and beyond, and facilitating volunteer days, facilitating contributions, right? Grants and contributions. So definitely check out Life Science Cares. Sarah McDonald is their executive director, and she'd be, I'm sure, more than happy to have that conversation with your company.
Great, thank you. Another audience question. How do the biotech companies that are members of MassBio seek outside support services? Is there some connection component to link needs and services?
So MassBio, part of what you get as, you know, a member of MassBio is access to so many tools and resources. And so I mentioned when I started at MassBio, I started to run our purchasing consortium. And what that is, if you're not familiar, is we aggregate the spending power of our 1,400 member companies and negotiate agreements on services and products that, you know, startups need. We are some of these companies' largest global customers because of the market share that we have. So incredible savings opportunity. And the point of this, right, is so you can channel your funds to science. Let us do that work. It's important that you as a company are focused on the science. So that's part of it. We also have a B2B program where members of MassBio can offer discounts to other members of MassBio. We have an employee rewards program, and this is all through the Edge Connector, and you can find that on our website, where individual employees can take advantage of all kinds of savings and discounts at restaurants and dry cleaning, et cetera. And then we have the Edge Benefits program, which is based on health insurance, commercial liability. So there's layers of opportunity that companies can take advantage of through our Edge programs.
Great. Thank you so much for elaborating on that for everybody. We also in the chat have a comment from Josephine that is not really a question, but I do want to highlight it because I think it's important. Back to childcare, there is a shortage of childcare workers. Please include in your discussions possible scholarships for students who are studying to be early childhood educators.
Thank you for that. That is such an important point, and that's certainly part of the conversation. How do we incentivize individuals to get into childcare? So thank you, Josephine.
Another audience question we have, when a biotech looks to move into a suburban community, there's always some abutters worried about safety. What are the protections we can tell nervous NIMBYs that these labs are safe?
Where your first stop on this. This is what we do. We help cities and towns and the people that are running those cities and towns understand what it means to have a life science company. We break down all the misconceptions and we show them the value, what this can mean for the economy, what it can mean for your constituents, what it can mean for the community, right? We talked about life science companies pride themselves on being true stewards of the community. So MassBio is your first stop on that journey.
I love that. Thank you. I wonder, since you've been doing this for so long, Kendall, if there are any particular challenges that you recall or stories that you want to share about, MassBio championing companies' expansion into a new community.
So, I mean, there's so many stories. I think maybe the message I want to send there is at the end of the day, these men and women that work in the life sciences are so patient driven. That's a hashtag that we use here at MassBio. And it's true. My favorite part of my job is to go to a company and to tour the lab and see the excitement and the passion that these scientists have for what they're doing. At the end of the day, they are providing solutions to patients that have unmet medical needs, right? And areas that Massachusetts has truly excelled in, right? Oncology, of course, but we are leaders as it relates to rare disease research. There are 7,000 rare diseases and only 5% of those have a solution for patients. Think about that. That's staggering. And again, as a community in 2020, we all understood for a moment what it was like to live with an unmet medical need. And the life science industry, again, came together and was able to provide a solution. But truly, this is what these men and women do every day. And to be in their home, right, in their lab, where this is their life work. They've been working on this research sometimes their entire professional career. They are so passionate about it. But at the end, they know it's because they're providing something to a patient, right? They're helping provide hope to a patient. So I think that's what's so exciting for me about this. I just love that. And to continue to see this investment in this growth in the industry, because we here in Massachusetts are working on the riskiest, most novel breakthrough science. This is what these small companies are doing every single day. So I don't know if that was responsive to your question, but I think it's important that people understand the passion that this community has for what they do.
Completely agree with that. And I'm glad that you brought up this idea that, we all had an unmet medical need for a moment. I remember a conversation that I had a while back with a company that's looking to sort of expedite clinical trial enrollment. And one of the founders brought up this point, which was, the New York Times had a vaccine tracker, like everybody was paying attention to how clinical trials for COVID vaccines were progressing. And now they're doing the same thing for antivirals and other medical interventions. And that was really new for a lot of people. but there are whole communities of patients who have always, had clinicaltrials.gov open in a tab all the time. And I think it just, speaks to the idea that life sciences as an industry is in the public spotlight in a way that it hasn't been in quite a while. And I wonder if you see challenges associated with that, or if it's really just an opportunity.
I truly think it's an opportunity. And take this step back again, right? We all understood how frustrating it was to not have a solution for something in 2020, right? To have an unmet medical need. And there's patients that go their whole life without having a solution. And so I think what has happened throughout 2020 and the outsized role, of course, that Massachusetts has played in this landscape of coming up with a solution as it relates to COVID-19, is it's garnered incredible excitement and interest. And obviously we're seeing that from an investment perspective, but also what it did was create this excitement amongst students to say, oh my gosh, this is what this industry does. I wasn't really sure. I want to be involved in this industry. It's a wonderful industry. Again, it's a patient-driven industry, but it's also a highly compensated industry. And it's a wonderful, meaningful career path. And so to have students start to think about this is the key to these future workforce talent issues, right? Continue to educate children, K through 12, what opportunities there are in the life sciences. And it doesn't have to necessarily be, as we've talked about, a science degree. It could be anything, but there's a need. And this is the industry here in Massachusetts, right? This is the economic driver of the economy here. And so why, as a student, wouldn't you want to be part of the life sciences industry?
Absolutely. So we have just a couple more minutes, and to go with that, we have a couple more audience questions. One, what's your best one piece of advice that you could give to a woman looking to break into this male-dominated life sciences sector?
Thank you for asking that question. So here's a story. And my one piece of advice I will say is to have confidence in yourself. You have to be strong and you have to have confidence. So I told you I wasn't from industry, right? I was a practicing attorney. I practiced estate planning and elder law, not life sciences. And so when I took this job, my first day on the job, I came in and there was a consultant that was overseeing the purchasing consortium in this interim period. And she looked at me and she said, "You're not the right person for this job. I don't know why they hired you. You have no life science experience and you probably won't be here that long." She gave me a binder of information and she said, "Here, good luck." And so not a great way to start day one, but she wasn't wrong. What she didn't know about me is my hunger, my willingness to learn and to prove her now wrong, right? And we are still friendly and I see her periodically and we laugh about this, which I'm glad we can laugh about this. But within 6 months of that time period, I had negotiated what is now our largest supplier agreement with Thermo Fisher Scientific through the EDGE agreement, right? Within 6 months, I didn't know the industry, but that was a benefit to me because I didn't get caught up in some of the relationships and allegiance. And I just was able to do what was best for our member companies. And that's something I've held near and dear to everything I do here, but you have to have confidence. And yeah, I'm often the only woman in the room, but I hold my own. I am confident in what I do, and I'm prideful of what I represent.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing that story. We have one more audience question. Obviously, life sciences have been around Boston due to the universities and therefore the talent. Does it make sense for the communities in the suburbs to try and attract life science education institutions? And if so, what is the best way to do that?
So I will say, and as I mentioned, right, I think there's some key ingredients in this recipe of success that we have here in Massachusetts. I mentioned it's these premier academic institutions, it's these incredible, hospitals, research hospitals, and it's these early stage biotech companies and the support from government. So you could, I think for towns and cities, those are key ingredients. This is what has made Worcester a successful life science cluster. Thinking about maybe in this next stage, recruitment of curriculum to train future manufacturing workforce would be a very smart thing to do, right? We know there's a need, and that can be in your vocational high school. That could be in your community college. You don't have to think about new sort of academic institutions. Tap into what you already have, but ensure that there's a training curriculum pathway, into the life sciences. That will certainly help recruitment.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we're at the end of our hour, so I won't ask any further questions. And it looks like we are out of audience questions, which is great. It means we've timed everything
We've
really
hit them
well.
all. Yay, it's a success.
But thank you so much, Kendalle, for this conversation. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Oh, Rowan, thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time. I hope the audience enjoyed it. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all so much, Rowan and Kendalle, for sharing your insight with us this morning. And I also want to thank again to our sponsors for this program today, the Village Bank and UMass Amherst, the Mount Ida campus. And thank you all so much for all your audience questions for an engaging discussion today. We have this discussion recorded, so we will be sending it out to you all for your reference at a later time, later this afternoon. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us. And again, Kendalle and Rowan, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
Take
Tiffany.
care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.